be able to convince
¿A dónde está papi? 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 ¿A dónde está papi?
Welcome to the Wednesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Wednesday evening. Howdy. How's it going, Mayhem Hippie? The weather in Vermont. Ooh, I don't have that information. No, I don't have that option. My chat bot or whatever is not that advanced, okay? Oh, I wanted to show the 89% humidity. Well, welcome to Florida. Imagine that, but like all the time. Imagine that, but like all the time. Oh yes. Look, if I just Google search Miami weather, right now Miami is a crisp 87 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, today's not that bad. Today's 69% humidity. Nice. Currently. Alio coming in hot with the 10 biddies. Today we've got a few different headlines to go through. We do have a new Bernie Sanders speech video thing. Whoa. All right, there we go. A new Bernie Sanders speech / video. I think we should start with that.
His Republican will be able to convince his Republican colleagues and Democratic colleagues as well that among many other reasons why we should vote against this major corporate welfare bill that's coming down the pike, which will add at least $76 billion to the deficit. So if we are concerned about the deficit, as Senator Lee is and many others are, I hope that will be one of the reasons we vote against this massive corporate welfare bill.
Nice. I love how like he uses the exact same like rhetoric against them. Basically saying like you guys can't be simultaneously talking about the deficit and the deficit and the deficit, while also saying that we need to give corporations goodies. You can't simultaneously care about the deficit and also have give all these freebies to corporations.
We will be considering later this afternoon. You know, I hear a lot of concern about the deficit here in the Senate, and I hear people say we can't afford to feed hungry children, can't afford to deal with climate change,
based.
we can't afford to guarantee health care to all. Deficit is very, very large.
Based.
Well, we're talking about $76 billion, at least that, maybe more, which will add to the deficit. So when you consider the deficit, you might want to also take into account tax breaks and corporate welfare for large profitable corporations. President, I want to say a few words about this so-called CHIPS bill and what it says about our national priorities, what it says about our tax policies, and basically what it says as to whether or not the U.S. Congress is capable of representing the needs of working families, or whether we are totally beholden to wealthy and powerful corporate interests and their campaign contributions. Last week, when I spoke about this issue, I expressed deep concern that Congress would provide $52 billion to a handful of profitable corporations in the microchip industry with no strings attached. Here it is, guys, $52 billion.
Right, like all these tens of billions of dollars that are just being essentially given to these corporations for the free. And we somehow are simultaneously saying we need to be fiscally responsible and the deficit or whatever, but obviously that's not necessarily exactly how things work, but nonetheless the argument is still made. And we somehow cannot find the funding to provide basic necessities like healthcare, education, food, housing, things like that. But we have somehow managed to be very good at finding tens of billions of dollars when it comes to giving out freebies and when it comes to giving out spending money for new weapons and whatnot.
Dollars. Well, I stand corrected. As a result of some new tax reduction language, the corporate welfare total for the microchip industry has gone up. It is now at $76 billion. And the corporate lobbyists working on this bill, like pigs at the trough, are not yet finished. They want more and more and more. Their needs are insatiable.
That's right.
Mr. President, needless to say, I do not usually quote approvingly from the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal. They are not my best friends, and in fact, I think I get attacked on that page more than any other member of the Congress. But as you know, a broken clock is right twice a day, and even the Wall Street Journal got this one right. Among the many reasons they urge Congress to vote against this bill.
Listening as I cook. The thing that like frustrates me the most about this, and like what's sad and kind of a testament to where we are and what kind of situation we're in, he's essentially speaking to what looks like an empty chamber. That's the most frustrating part about this whole thing. It looks like he is speaking to an empty chamber. I mean, he's still doing it because he's got to. Clearly this dude's been singing the same tune for decades and decades and decades because nothing changes. But nonetheless.
Is one that I think is very relevant, and let me quote. This is from the Wall Street Journal editorial page today. Quote, "The chip bill isn't needed to compete with China, and it will set a precedent that other industries will follow. Anybody who can throw up a China competition angle will ask for money. Why Republicans want to sign up for this is a mystery," end of quote, Wall Street Journal. And the point they make is a good one. We should be clear that over 90% of the cell phones used in this country, over 90% of the laptops used in this country are made in China. So you pass this bill, and tomorrow we'll hearing, I no doubt, from the cell phone industry, from the computer laptop industry, about how they need their welfare checks as well. So I think the Wall Street Journal...
Yeah, the media has painted him as a crackpot uncle of politics. Yeah, like, it's so funny how, like, the like, more conservative end of, like, the Democratic Party is, like, the normal... is painted as, like, what the establishment should be or the status quo. But, like, God forbid somebody starts making sense in Congress and actually attempts to provide arguments that would be in favor of the working class. God forbid. All of a sudden, this crazy Bernie, Crazy Bernie just doing a speech to nobody again.
Every once in a while makes a good point. Today they did. Mr. President, I recently came across a very, very interesting interview that the CEO of Intel, Mr. Pat Gelsinger, did last Friday on CNBC's Squawk Box. And I think that interview that he did tells us everything that we want to know about the American oligarchy, about corporate arrogance, and the state of American politics. And this is what Mr. Gelsinger said last Friday, and I quote, Mr. Gelsinger, head of Intel, quote, "My message to congressional leaders is, hey, if I'm not done with the job, I don't get to go home. Neither should you. He's talking to Congress. Do not go home for August recess until you have passed the CHIPS Act, because I and others in the industry will make investment decisions. And do you want those investments in the U.S., or are we simply not competitive enough to do them here, and we need to go to Europe or Asia for those? Get the job done. Do not go home for August recess without getting these bills passed. End of quote. That's Pat Gelsinger, head of Intel, last Friday. In other words, Mr. President, the CEO of a major corporation, which made nearly $20 billion in profits last year, and a CEO who received a $179 million compensation package, is saying to Congress that if you don't give my industry, the microchip industry, $76 billion, and my company, it is estimated, some $20 or $30 billion, that despite their profound love for our country and their respect for American workers and their understanding of the needs of the U.S. military and the healthcare industry, despite all of that, in order to make more profits, they are prepared to go to Europe and Asia. Now, Mr. President, I am thankfully not a lawyer, but that sure sounds like extortion to me. What Mr. Gelsinger is saying is that if you don't give the industry a blank check, here's $76 billion, and they want more, by the way, despite the needs of the military for advanced microchips, and we hear that from the military, despite the needs of the medical industry for advanced microchips, despite the entire needs of the American economy for advanced microchips, the industry is threatening to abandon this country and move abroad. Patriotic people, no doubt, clearly lovers of America. Mr. Gelsinger says we should stay in session, if necessary, through August in order to pass his legislation. Well, I think we might want to stay in session through August, but not necessarily to pass his legislation. Because what I hear from the people in Vermont and people all across this country is that the job they want done is not a massive handout to large, profitable corporations. The job they want Congress to do is for a change to protect the American working class, our middle class, and the needs of the most vulnerable people in this country. What I hear is that the American people want us to guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child, as every other major country on earth does. What I hear is that the American people think it's absurd that some of the wealthiest people in this country and largest corporations don't pay a nickel in federal taxes, and that we should demand that those loopholes be ended. What I hear is that the American people want us to deal with the existential threat of climate change so that the young people of this country can actually have a planet that they can grow up with in a healthy way. What I hear from the elderly people of this country and my state is they can't make it on the Social Security benefits they're receiving now. They want to raise those benefits. What I hear from the people back home is they want Congress to do the job and protect a woman's right to control her own body. They want to see us pass serious gun safety legislation, and they want to protect the rights of all Americans to be able to vote. That, among many other things, is what I hear from the American people in terms of getting the job done. Not too many people that I can recall, and I've been all over this country, say, Bernie, you go back there and you get the job done. And you give enormously profitable corporations who pay outrageous compensation packages to their CEOs.
True. You are here. These late nights are hard to coordinate. Yeah, I get you, Astro. But yes, I am here. Always, 5 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Thursday. The show doesn't stop.
Billions and billions of dollars in corporate welfare. Now, maybe, Mr. President, you hear that. I don't hear that from the people in my state. And by the way, when we talk about an expenditure of $76 billion, yeah, we can give it to some large profitable corporations with no strings attached, or we can use it, $76 billion, to expand Medicare to provide senior citizens with a high-quality hearing aids and eyeglasses that they desperately need. And for a bit more, we can provide dental care as well. For $76 billion, we could eliminate homelessness in America and create hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs from Maine to California, building all of the affordable rental units that this country desperately
Jesus
needs.
Christ.
Yeah, we're going to end homelessness or give a corporate welfare
Wow,
check
22:34.
to profitable corporations.
Sheesh. It's almost
President, for $76
midnight.
billion, we could make every community college in America tuition-free for the next 7 years. Go home and ask the people whether they think they'd rather spend money on allowing our young people to be able to go to community college tuition-free or a welfare check, a large profitable corporation. And on it goes. $76 billion is a lot of money. I know, Ms. Senator Lee, where I probably would prefer to see that go into deficit reduction, fair enough. And I'm concerned about deficit reduction, but I'm making the point that we can invest this in a way that really improves lives for millions and millions of working families. Mr. President, there is no doubt that there is a serious global shortage in microchips and semiconductors, which is making it harder for manufacturers to produce the cars, the cell phones, and the electronic equipment that we need. The shortage is costing American workers good jobs and raising prices for families. And that is why I strongly support efforts to expand U.S. microchip production. But the question we should be asking is this: should American taxpayers provide the microchip industry with a blank check of $76 billion at a time when semiconductor companies are making tens of billions of dollars a year in profits and paying their CEOs very high salaries and compensation packages? And I think the answer to that
It's no,
is a resounding no.
obviously.
And it's important, in light of Mr. Gelsinger's remarks and his threat to go to Asia or to Europe, to have a little bit of history about this issue. Mr. President, over the last 20 years, the microchip industry has shut down over 780 manufacturing plants in the United States and eliminated 150,000 American jobs while moving most of its production overseas.
That's
And
right.
they did that, by the way, after receiving $9.5 billion in government subsidies and loans.
Yeah, like they take all this money and all these tax breaks and freebies, and then they just do away with jobs anyways, and they take their jobs or factories or whatever overseas because it's cheaper anyways, because that's capitalism. The issue here at heart is capitalism.
In other words, we have the absurd situation where we have a crisis that is caused precisely by the people we are now attempting to bail out. So as a reward for their bad behavior, for shutting down 780 manufacturing establishments in America, they come back and say, oh, we have a crisis in America, we need your help. So they want us to pay to undo the damage they caused. Well, that may make sense to someone, but not to me. In total, Mr. President, it has been estimated that 5 major semiconductor companies will receive the lion's share of this technology handout. Those companies are Intel, Texas Instruments, Micron Technology, Global Foundries, and Samsung.
Nice.
These 5 companies made $70 billion in profit last year. The company that will likely benefit the most from this taxpayer assistance is Mr. Gelsinger's company, Intel. Now, I have nothing against Intel, and I wish them the best, but Intel is not a poor company. Last year, Intel made nearly $20 billion in profit.
Jesus.
During the pandemic, Intel had enough money to spend $16.6 billion, not on research and development, not on building new plants, but on buying back its own stock to reward its executives and wealthy shareholders. Over the past 20 years, Intel has spent over $100 million on lobbying and campaign contributions. Say $100 million may seem like a lot of money, but if you're about to get $20
You sound a bit nasally. I hope you're well. Probably, well, I've been talking all day, so it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if my voice sounds a bit dead. Or, nasally, as I'm forced to use the lower ends.
billion from the taxpayers of America, that is a very modest investment. And meanwhile, while they spent $100 million on lobbying and campaign contributions, they were shipping thousands of jobs to China and other low-income countries. Does this really sound like a company that needs a taxpayer handout? Another company that would receive taxpayer assistance under this legislation is Texas Instruments. Last year, Texas Instruments made $7.8 billion in profits. In 2020, the company spent $2.5 billion buying back its own stock.
Wow. Wow. Like the profits were $7 billion and it spent maybe just under a third of that. It spent literally a third of its profits. It spent a third of its profits engaging in stock buybacks. Nice. Must be nice.
Other companies that will receive taxpayer support are the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. And by the way, you would be shocked to know that the largest shareholder of the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company is, well, you guessed it, it's the government of Taiwan. And so we'd be giving money, I guess, directly to the government of Taiwan. And on it goes. Mr. President, I should be clear in stating that I do believe in industrial policy. I think that at times it is absolutely appropriate for the government to sit down with the private sector and say, look, we have needs and we want to work with you to solve those needs. You have a right to make a fair profit. We have the right to see the needs of the American people addressed. We need a partnership. To me, industrial policy means cooperation between the government and the private sector, cooperation. It does not mean the government providing massive amounts of corporate welfare to profitable corporations without getting anything in return. So
yeah, like that's what's so gross about this whole thing. That's what's so gross about this whole thing, where we have like companies literally, just taking away billions in subsidies and whatnot for the free, completely free. No, oh, hold on, maybe I can fix it. Maybe I can fix the nasally part here. Let's just. Okay, there we go. All right. Hopefully that sounds a little bit better. But nonetheless, my point is, I just don't think that companies should be allowed to run away with tens of millions of dollars of freebies in exchange for essentially nothing. Essentially nothing. Well, liberalism. Yeah, it is. That is better. Sweet. We went back to our default settings. Sorry about that. I was messing with some stuff, and I see it. I see what you're saying, but no worries. We got it. We fixed it. Yay.
Government develop an industrial policy that benefits all of our society.
But yes, you're correct. That's liberalism.
Policy that benefits the
100%.
The powerful, their lobbyists, and the campaign contributors. In 1968, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, and I quote, "The problem is that we all too often have socialism for the rich and rugged free enterprise capitalism for the poor," end of quote. I'm afraid that what Dr. King said 54 years ago was accurate back then, and it is even more accurate today. So, Mr. President, the Senate has an important decision to make, and that is, do we simply provide a blank check, or do we put some restrictions on that money? And that is why I will be offering an amendment which does that. It seems to me that if private companies are going to benefit from generous taxpayer subsidies, the financial gains made by these companies must be shared with the American people, not just wealthy shareholders. In other words, if microchip companies make a profit as a direct result of these federal grants.
Yeah, and like the idea can also be framed in a way that, listen, these companies are using our infrastructure, they're using government money. What I'm trying to say is that these companies were made and built and sustained by us, the workers, and through government subsidies. So they should be comfortable, they should be expecting to give back.
The taxpayers of this country have a right to get a reasonable return on that investment. Further,
correct.
If microchip companies receive taxpayer assistance, they must agree that they will not buy back their own stock, outsource American jobs overseas, repeal existing collective bargaining agreements, and must remain neutral in any union organizing effort. This is not a radical idea. All of these conditions were imposed on companies that received taxpayer assistance during the pandemic and passed the Senate, the CARES Act, by a vote of 96-0. And that is why I will be filing an amendment to impose these conditions to this legislation. Now, I understand, Mr. President, that some language has been inserted into this bill that would prohibit microchip companies from using these grants to buy back their own stock. But let us be clear. This language is totally meaningless. Under this legislation, companies will still be able to use the enormous profits that they are making on stock buybacks. Bottom line, let us rebuild the U.S. microchip industry, but let us do it in a way that benefits all of our people, not just a handful of wealthy, profitable, and powerful corporations.
President.
Senator from Utah.
Mr. President, the senator from Vermont and I don't agree on every issue.
Yeah, he's such a surprise when you hear him in full blood. Yeah, I mean, he's right. He's right. No lies detected here. Folks, I just discovered that the video game Stray, which if you don't know what that video game is, it's a recent release that just came out. I thought originally was for the PlayStation, but it is on Steam. So that means I get to play as a cute kitty cat on my computer. I'm super excited. I think I might actually just go ahead and get it. Stray is a video game that I've been looking forward to for ever since it was announced. It's been in the works, I think, for maybe a year, more than that, and it finally decided to come out July 19th, yesterday. Bernie Live feeds the soul, true, and no lies detected there. Bernie being Bernie. We have the ex-chancellor or the ex-chair of the foreign minister contending for our next prime minister. I have no idea who that is. I'm not gonna lie. I have no idea. Richie Sunak versus Liz Truss. Yeah, I have no idea who these people are. Do you have like a summary of what their politics are? All right. So, right wing and very right wing. Oof, yikes. Yikes. That doesn't sound like a good option. That doesn't sound like a good position to be in. Not that we're in that much of a different position, but you know. The Secret Service, as you folks may have or may not know, mysteriously and just by pure mystery, has managed to not be able to find text messages that were allegedly deleted when requested by the January 6th committee. Apparently, there was some texts that were, I think, between January 5th and 6th that mysteriously just are not there anymore. I'm sure, by pure coincidence. Let me see what what I posted on Twitter. Oh yeah. We'll go over this in a second. That's relevant to this, but hold on. Yeah, so Congress, okay, so I remember now. The Congress asked for records of supposedly allegedly deleted texts between, I think, January 5th and January 6th. And it now mysteriously disappeared. Yeah. Secret Service was told at least once before January 6th to preserve texts. 2 emails, at least one before January 6th, told agency staffers to preserve records on their phones. A third in February of 2021 told them to preserve communication specific to January 6th. So they were told several times. And I assume that just department policy would say that you kind of need to have this if you're in the Secret Service. Records are incredibly important, it turns out. But it's just out of pure coincidence, and I'm sure nothing nefarious going on here. It magically disappeared. Magically disappeared. Did you guys discuss the weird death of Ivana Trump? I honestly don't want to dive too much into like thinking without enough evidence. I mean, what we know is basically she died supposedly, from what I understand, as a result of some complication because she fell down the stairs or something like that. But people have been saying that some of the evidence or some of the storyline doesn't add up. But I'm gonna be honest, I don't know. I don't know, unless I have some concrete evidence to suggest otherwise. This is the story that we have so far. Could it change in the future? Maybe, but I mean, we got to work with the facts that we have. Some people have been saying that there's some weird details of this incident that don't quite add up, but to me, I don't know. I don't particularly I haven't particularly engaged with it in depth because, like, I don't know, I need more. I need more than that. Is there anything to do with the truckload of documents that Trump took to Mar-a-Lago? Oh yeah, no, this is different. These are the documents that he tried to flush down the toilet or something like that. I remember that, but no, this is something to do with the Secret Service. This all kicked off because there was testimony from, I believe, Hutchinson, that she made a claim under oath that supposedly there was an incident with the Secret Service, and Trump tried to take the wheel, or tried to, like, I don't know, wrestle the Secret Service for the wheel, or something to that effect. He threw a fit in the car, in the what's called the Beast, the presidential car. And immediately some folks started to dispute that, and some folks, meaning some folks from the Secret Service, said, well, you know, it's not quite like that. And said, then, well, okay. I mean, if that's the case, then present your evidence. And all of a sudden, poof, the texts were gone. Just like that. Just like that. I'm sure I might be missing the complete, like, details of the story, but the TLDR is that it all started with the Hutchinson testimony that claimed of an incident where Trump tried to take the wheel, or tried to, you know, grab the wheel from the Secret Service. Secret Service says that, well, that's not exactly how it happened, or it wasn't true. Whatever. They were trying to dispute Hutchinson's claims. And then when asked to put up or shut up, the text disappeared. Anyways, a senior Secret Service official said agency employees received 2 emails, at least one prior to January 6th, reminding them to preserve records on their cell phones, including text messages, before their devices were essentially restored to factory settings, and texts were lost as part of a planned reset and replacement program across the agency. Yeah, so they were definitely told, and not only that, like, nothing is deleted forever. If it's digital, it can be found. You have to assume that. You have to assume that unless there are certain circumstances that would make it impossible, but generally speaking, if it's digital, most likely they'll be able to get it. That's just my assumption, and that's the way one should expect that something, especially like the Secret Service, should have, right? Sorry about that. Um, the senior official said that employees received a third email on February 4th instructing them to preserve all communications specific to January 6th. At that point, several congressional committee had asked for Secret Service communications from the day of the insurrection at the Capitol. I love that they're finally using the word insurrection. Finally, Jesus. That's not common parlance from the mainstream media so far. Usually they call it a riot, or they'll call it the attack on the Capitol. No, the proper word is insurrection. The first email about preserving records came on December 9th of 2020 from Secret Service Office of Strategic Planning, and the second one was in January of 2021 from the agency's chief information officer, though the source didn't provide an exact date. Both emails included reminders that federal employees have the responsibility to preserve the records and included instructions on how to do so. Yeah, so something is not something's not quite adding up. And either someone is so broadly incompetent, I mean just so massively incompetent that just a massive oopsies, and that oopsies just happened to also coincidentally that oopsies just happened to coincidentally align with the dates that Congress is asking for. I mean, you know, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to think that this wasn't done on purpose. The first two emails did not specifically reference January 6th, according to a Secret Service official and another senior official within the DHS. The Secret Service official said that by the time the Inspector General asked for the records from more than a month after the attack, that information was already lost. The exact date cell phone records were lost remains unclear, and the timeline is under investigation by the National Archives. Oh man. At the Aspen Security Forum on Tuesday evening, DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas promised that the Secret Service will cooperate fully with the inquiries in the January 6th committee and others into what happened with the missing text messages. Asked by MSNBC correspondent Trymaine Lee whether he believes that the texts were deleted by accident, Mayorkas said the migration was planned well before January of 2021, referring to a data migration that the Secret Service has blamed for the deletion. Yeah, I'm sorry, but something doesn't add up here. Somebody's either lying or I mean, it's just hard to believe that this is just complete and utter gross incompetence, or at least solely gross incompetence. I think that has to be some intentionality behind it. I mean, and this again only happened because the Hutchinson testimony. I think the facts will be disclosed, and we will address the facts as they are learned or continue to be learned, and we will learn from it. Okay, whatever. The reality is that there's a breach or a security risk, I think, within the Secret Service. Certainly something to investigate. For sure. It's just hard to believe that this was an accident. That's strange. I don't know. For some reason, my custom bot decides to just delete itself. I don't know. Hey, Heat, how's it going? Peachy. Nice. Let's see. Yep, I don't know. Went to the grocery store, which is half an hour away. Sheesh. Yep, I give up. Alright. I'm just gonna deal with it later. Anyways, TLDR, the Secret Service is definitely either engaging in some type of cover-up or so grossly incompetent that probably numerous people need to be fired. If it's sheer incompetence, then numerous people need to be fired. Why not both? It could be. For all I know, it could be. It could very well be. Alright, let's take a look at this.
When's the last time you talked to the former president, President Trump?
Within the last week.
Within the last week?
Yeah.
Before or after he tweeted about you?
Before.
And what was that conversation like?
It's one of those that it's very consistent. He makes his case, which I respect. He would like us to do something different in Wisconsin. I explained that it's not allowed under the Constitution. He has a different opinion, and he put the tweet out. So that's it. Yeah.
When's the last time you talked to the former president, President Trump?
Within the last week.
Within the last week?
Yeah.
Before or after he tweeted about you?
Before.
And what was that conversation like?
It's one of those that it's very consistent. He makes his case, which I respect. He would like us to do something different in Wisconsin. I explained that it's not allowed under the Constitution. He has a different opinion, and he put the tweet out. So that's it. Yeah.
No. that's casually explaining to this reporter or interviewer that the president again attempted to overturn the elections for the, at this point, umpteenth time, and he said no, that's not constitutional. So in other words, the president is trying to subvert the Constitution and subvert the democratic norms. This is now we're approaching 2 years of this. We're approaching 2 years. This alone should be enough, folks. This alone should be enough. I gotta get some streaming in soon. True. Very true. Top Wisconsin Republican Robin Vos. Trump is still asking me to decertify the election. The Speaker of the Wisconsin Assembly, Robin Vos, said former President Trump called him to decertify the 2020 election results in the state last week, more than a year and a half since the race was called for Joe Biden. In an interview with WISN Channel 12 Milwaukee, the state's most powerful Republican said he had talked with Trump within the last week and described the conversation as, quote, "It's one of those things that's very consistent. We saw the video. He makes his case, which I respect, and he would like us to do something different. I explained it's not allowed under the Constitution." Yeah, this is a very, 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 very weak-sauced way of saying that the president is continuing to subvert democratic norms. Block his number. Thanks for the shadow, no problem. I'm still listening. How many times did we say that it's enough already? He was too grief-stricken over his ex-wife to testify, but not to attend the rally. Oh, yeah, of course. No, he doesn't give an F. He doesn't give a flying F about his wife. Or his ex-wife. After the conversation with Voss, Trump wrote in a July 13th post on Truth Social, "Looks like Speaker Robin Voss, a longtime professional rhino, always looks to guard his flank and will be doing nothing about the amazing Wisconsin Supreme Court decision." What? Rhino, meaning Republican in name only, is used as an insult in inter-party conflicts. Yes, we know. The court decision that Trump was referring to was a July 8th hearing that made most absentee drop boxes in the state illegal in future elections. The former president, who continues to push the basis conspiracy theory that he did not in fact lose the 2020 election, wanted Voss to use the Wisconsin ruling retroactively to decertify the race, which Trump lost to Biden by 20,000 votes after winning the state by a similarly tight margin in 2016. In other words, when I win by the same razor-thin margin, then it's a complete and total victory. But if I lose, then it's fake, rigged, or whatever. Trump added that Voss was letting Democrats get away with murder. He said Voss's comments were a waste of a brilliant and courageous decision by the Wisconsin's highest court. The Wisconsin Supreme Court said that most absentee drop boxes in the state were going to be illegal in future elections. It doesn't make mail-in voting or mail-in ballots or absentee ballots illegal. Just the drop boxes. So you got to be very careful and aware of where you can drop off your absentee ballot or just mail it in if you have the chance. I mean, that's it. Right, heads I win, tails you lose, correct. Thanks to an extensive Republican gerrymander of its state legislature, Voss essentially controls Wisconsin politics, and last year Politico referred to him as the shadow governor, even though a Democrat, Tony Evers, won the governor's seat in 2018. In a post Tuesday night, Trump threatened Voss ahead of the August 9th Republican primary, writing, "This is not the time for him to hide, but a time to act. I don't know his opponent in the upcoming primary, but feel certain he will do well. Speaker Voss does not move with gusto. Robin, don't let the voters of Wisconsin down." So again, he's just trying to strong arm, just like he did in Georgia. He's trying to strong arm the elected the Republican state legislatures to overturn the elections that happened a year and a half ago. I'm thinking we need to get the word out more that you're streaming in the evenings. Maybe you should do a hot tub stream. I mean, I can green screen myself in a hot tub and do the news in a hot tub. That's not impossible. That's not exactly an impossible thing, right? Like, I could green screen my way into a hot tub. I have a green screen. I can just put it over the panels, and put a hot tub image in the background or something. And I can officially label myself as a hot tub streamer, and it wouldn't be a lie. It wouldn't be a lie. Who knows? I mean, this arm could just be hanging off the side of the tub. Nobody knows. I can make it. I can make it so. I can make it so. Yeah, good quality content. Doing politics from a hot tub. From a hot tub. Setting. I'm sorry, I keyed. True. I mean, listen, it's not an impossible ask. I think we all know Donald Trump is Donald Trump. There is a very little we can do to control or predict what he will do. What? That's his response? when asked why, when asked about like the umpteenth time that this president has attempted to subvert democracy, again, no pushback whatsoever. It's just Donald Trump, you know. That's it. Instead of saying, "Hey, this asshole is repeatedly attempting to subvert democracy. I do not agree with this. And you know what? I should make a motion to get this guy out of here." That's it. That would be the appropriate. That is the only appropriate response. The view that the 2020 election was stolen is shared by the majority of Republicans, and the GOP nominees in both Pennsylvania and Maryland gubernatorial races also deny that Biden won the presidency. Yeah, this is not good, folks. This idea of running as part of the platform, as part of a platform running and clearly having some success in some cases, on the platform that the election was rigged, stolen, fraudulent, or whatever, is deeply disturbing. Okay, and this is only the Republican Party. Only the Republican Party is making coordinated efforts to shake the legitimacy of our electoral process. Arguably, one of the most sacred core elements of, if you want to call it that, a democratic system. What I'm trying to say is the Republican Party is incompatible with democracy, and they need to go. That's it. That's like the TLDR of that. The Republican Party is incompatible with democracy, and that's it. I've demonstrated this time and time again. It's not just one person. It's not just one person. It's not just one fringe element. It is the entire Republican Party that is incompatible with democracy. Period. There are only a handful of Republicans that are going out and saying that this is wrong, and the rest of them either agree or have done absolutely nothing to stop this. So they're just as complicit. So it's not a stretch or an exaggeration to say that it's the entire party. The entire party. This is not compatible with democracy, and it needs to go. All these little boys need to be held accountable. I'm so sick of it. Yeah, and that's the sad part about it. Accountability is basically non-existent. The promotion of that false belief helped lead to violence in Washington, D.C. on January 6th when a mob of Trump supporters stormed the Capitol building in an attempt to stop the formal counting of electoral votes. That was their goal, and they were driven, directed, and encouraged, essentially, by the Republican Party, and the head of all of that would be Trump. The insurrection left multiple people dead. The hearings of the January 6th committee have presented damning evidence that Trump planned and incited the events of that day, but whether he actually will face charges from the Justice Department is still unclear. Yeah. The fact that there's not much accountability is really the sad part about this. You can't just let this go, right? Like, man, out of all the things, you would think that, like, okay, listen, this line cannot be crossed. This line cannot be crossed, and that's the end of it, no matter what. But accountability seems to be scarce nowadays. The Arizona GOP censures Rusty Bowers, who testified before the House committee, the January 6th committee. The Republican Party of Arizona's executive committee censured Rusty Bowers, a Speaker of the State House who testified on Capitol Hill about events that surrounded the January 6th insurrection. Kelly Ward, a chairwoman of the Arizona GOP, announced the condemnation by the panel on Twitter, saying that Bowers is no longer a Republican in good standing. We call on Republicans. Whoa, hey, what? Stop trying to get me to do an IQ test. All right, I'm good. Thank you. That's a weird ad. The condemnation by the panel on Twitter saying Bowers is no longer a Republican in good standing. We call on Republicans to replace him at the ballot box in the August primary. So again, I don't think people understand when I literally mean the Republican Party as an entity is incompatible. Stop. Okay. Is incompatible with democracy. I literally mean the entire Republican Party from the ground up is just incompatible with democracy. This guy dared to testify in the January 6th committee, and he was essentially censured. The same thing with Liz Cheney. Now, these guys aren't heroes. They're just disgusting people. But my point is, if you do not fall in line with the dear leader's assertion that this election was rigged or stolen or whatever BS, then you are not a Republican. They do not consider you a Republican. The censure resolution from the state party criticized Bauer for a number of actions as a state house member, including on election integrity, immigration, and gender identity. What? The measure also claimed that Bowers has not been forthright with his interaction between others in legislative leadership, Republican Party leadership, in dealings with Maricopa County bureaucrats, lobbyists, consultants, and the liberal media. Yeah. Oof. Yikes. Bowers has lost confidence of a majority of Republican Party leaders and his colleagues in the legislature in the state of Arizona. Bowers testified publicly before the House committee investigating the January 6th insurrection on the Capitol last month, alongside elections officials from Georgia who discussed how former President Trump and his allies pressured them to toss out election results from their states. Yep. Arizona House Speaker detailed how John Eastman, a conservative attorney who was behind a plan to overturn the 2020 election, and Representative Andy Biggs, a Republican from Arizona, urged him to decertify President Biden's electors. He also received a call from Trump and Rudy Giuliani after the election, which Giuliani claimed to have evidence of voter fraud and evidence that never materialized. Right, because it never existed. BRB, no problem. Yeah, and it never existed. And Bowers told the committee the scheme to replace Biden's electors with a fake slate for the Trump was a tragic parody and emotionally disgust protesters showing up at his home after he defied the former president and refused to go along with his plan to reverse the election results in Arizona. Yeah. This is the state of the Republican Party. Period. This is fundamentally a undemocratic party, fundamentally incompatible with democratic norms, and any chance to remove them from power should be taken. Should be taken. Any tool that can be used to remove these people from power should be taken. Of course, I'm only speaking about the electoral side of it. Speaking of our good friend Rudy Giuliani, judge orders Rudy Giuliani to testify before the grand jury in Trump election probe. Uh-oh. Giuliani, who urged Georgia officials to change the outcome of the 2020 vote, has been ordered to testify before the Fulton County Special Grand Jury on August 9th. A New York judge has ordered Rudy Giuliani to testify before the Georgia Special Grand Jury, hearing evidence in an investigation into a possible 2020 election interference by former President Trump and others. And again, I don't think this is just Georgia. I think that he should be investigated in every state this happened. Of course, I don't think he will. A prime example would be Arizona. But again, consequences, accountability. Who knows? The order came after Giuliani, who was Trump's personal attorney, failed to appear at a July 13th hearing before the judge to challenge a subpoena for his testimony in the investigation. Giuliani was subpoenaed earlier this month as a material witness by the grand jury called by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis to investigate any coordinated attempts to unlawfully alter the outcomes of the 2020 election. Sorry. The subpoena said that Giuliani made statements at the legislative hearings in Georgia falsely claiming that there had been widespread voter fraud in the state. Again, all of these claims that we were told that, hey, you know, there's a big problem and plethora of evidence and whatnot, never materialized. Okay? Just, again, for the umpteenth time, evidence of widespread voter fraud that would even come remotely close to overturning the results of this election never materialized. There's evidence that Giuliani's appearance and testimony at the hearing was part of a multi-state coordinated plan by the Trump campaign to influence the results of the 2020 election in Georgia and elsewhere. The subpoena said in a filing in Fulton County Superior Court on Wednesday, Willis said Giuliani had been ordered to appear before a grand jury on August 9th and on any such other dates as this court may order. A lawyer for Giuliani did not immediately respond for a request for comment. The special grand jury also subpoenaed other members of Trump's former legal team. Separately, a Fulton County judge has ordered Senator Lindsey Graham to testify before the grand jury on August 2nd after the senator's lawyer has indicated that he wouldn't comply with the grand jury's subpoena for his testimony. The subpoena seeks about phone calls he made to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger and his staff about the 2020 election. This was the alleged very perfect phone call. I believe that that's what that's referencing. The very perfect phone call where Donald Trump asked to find the exact amount of votes that would change the outcome. I think it was like 11,000 or something. What a weird adjective to describe a phone call. That's funny. Representative Jody Hice, a Republican, Trump ally who voted to reject the state-certified election results, is also fighting a subpoena to testify before the grand jury. Meanwhile, nearly a dozen of Georgia's false presidential electors revealed that they've been subpoenaed to appear before the grand jury as well. According to a court filing, an attorney for Willis said in a separate filing that all 16 of the false electors have been notified that they are targets of her investigation. Ha! We will see at the end of the day if there is any kind of accountability. I'm still here and listening, was eating dinner and shopping for the guts to replace some lights for solar. Nice. Based and poggers. It still blows my mind that this isn't like a bigger deal. I mean, like you have the president of the United States engaging in a scheme to, along with the Republican Party, to shoehorn fake electors or to decertify results in different states in a multi-state scheme in an attempt to alter the results of the 2020 election. I mean, like, this should be wall to wall to wall to wall to wall, massive. This is huge. This is never in my, and to my knowledge, this has never happened where a political party coordinated this much in an attempt to overturn an election. I mean, to my knowledge, and if somebody can correct me, I mean, I'm open to seeing another example where this happened. I'm just blown away that this is just normal, I guess. Or at the very least, I feel like the American people don't quite have the grasp of the severity of this, right? Like, this is just wild. This is unfathomable to me. That a single party, a political party, would go through all this coordination and effort to legitimately try to overturn the elections in this manner, up to and including shoehorning fake electors. And what's wild about this whole thing is that because certain people and because certain bureaucratic positions weren't gonna play ball with this whole thing, that's the only reason it worked. It didn't work. That's the only reason it didn't work. They did successfully steal the presidential election 20 years ago, and everyone accepted it. Well, you know what? I stand corrected. I stand corrected, and the Supreme Court rubber stamped it, essentially. You're right. You're right. The answer should have been right in front of my face. The Bush election was dubious, at best. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. What I guess, let me do a little backpedaling over here. I have never seen a political party engage in this kind of behavior where, I mean, shoehorning fake electors, that's a whole other level. Yeah, the Supreme Court was a body that stole it. Yeah, and like, not only did George Bush didn't win by any stretch of the imagination the popular vote, and arguably some questions are to be had about that election, but he was able to appoint, I believe, one of the justices, and then, or two, and then Republican Donald Trump also didn't win the popular vote, and he got 3 justices that just kind of cemented the supermajority between Trump and George Bush Jr. Yeah. Think about that. Think about that for a second. 2, yes. W appointed Robertson Alito. There you go. And Donald Trump got 3. Both of those presidents lost the popular vote. One of them won his election under dubious circumstances. If you wanna talk about an election that probably should have been looked at a little bit more closely, the 2001 election would have been it. The 2001 election would have been it. But yes, you're absolutely correct. We will see what kind of information Mr. Giuliani will end up giving, if anything. And as I've said before, we have been following this from start to finish. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I did yesterday. Preface this story with this one. Grim warnings as oppressive U.S. heat wave spreads. A dangerous heat wave that has wilted the south-central U.S. is spreading Wednesday with about 110 million people under heat alerts in more than 24 states. That's more than half the country. More than half the states, from California to New England, and many expected areas are expecting high temperatures of 90s, in the 90s or triple digits. The leaders around the country have warned, get to a cool place and check on each other. Or find out the root cause of this problem and freaking fix it. We know what it is. Okay. The most intense heat is expected over the southwest and south central U.S. with high gains expected 100 degrees in much of Texas, where sweltering conditions have spurred record levels of power consumption. By the way, I would also like to point out that Texas's wind energy is kind of carrying this whole thing, thanks to wind turbines. And in much of the Northeast, although Wednesday's high temperatures will range from 80s to 90s, humidity will push the heat index, what the air will feel like, into the upper 90s and low 100s. I believe Mayhem Hippie was the one that posted 87% humidity. Wild. In New York, residents are urged to stay indoors in the coming days to avoid dangerous conditions that can lead to heat stress and illness. Jesus. In Boston, Mayor Michelle Wu declared a heat emergency through Thursday and announced at least 12 community centers will open to anyone who wants to cool off. More than 50 splash pads will be available at city parks and playgrounds. It is clear that a changing climate is a risk to our health. I urge everyone to stay cool and stay safe and check on your neighbors during the week. Yep. Connecticut's governor activated the state's extreme hot weather protocol on Sunday that will help in part assure availability of cooling centers. So I think we get the point. I think we get the point. The stress being on the fact that we are experiencing records that are now becoming just, or shall we continue down this path, will become just the norm. This won't be the exception, it will just be the norm. You will have to find out about the wet bulb air. Oh, yeah, the wet bulb temperature. Yes. Essentially, the wet bulb is a good gauge to make sure that, you're safe. And just to clarify for the folks, the wet bulb temperature is a measure of heat, stress, and direct sunlight, which takes into account temperature, humidity, wind speed, and sun angle, I believe. And physical activity. Gotcha. So even folks who are used to the heat, wet bulb temperatures of 90 degrees Fahrenheit would be the equivalent heat index of 130 degrees Fahrenheit. So that would be, no, that's catastrophic. But my point is that's what that means. Yes, it's a more accurate gauge as to whether or not you should be outside. The point being is, okay, we know that this isn't normal. We know that what's causing this is climate change, and we know that humans are the driving force behind this. We know that fossil fuels and, among other things like animal agriculture and all this, are driving huge driving factors to why we're experiencing the scenarios that we are. And as humans are the driving factor, we also have the ability or have the choice of whether or not we want to continue down this path. That's the reality. The problem is we have no sense of urgency. President Joe Biden announced new executive states to combat climate change on Wednesday, but fell short of issuing a climate emergency declaration as some Dems have called for amid stalled negotiations over major environmental legislation in Washington. I'll just say it outright. I don't believe there was any major environmental legislation being proposed as far as I can tell, and any inkling of it has been effectively torpedoed by President Joe Manchin. Since Congress is not acting as it should, this is an emergency and I will look at it that way. But the problem is, you're saying these things, and you have the capability of declaring an emergency, but you didn't. This is a choice that you're making. This is an active choice that you're making. I understand that the president cannot unilaterally just snap their fingers and make things happen. But there are measures that a president can take. One of them being declaring a emergency that would release federal funds to attempt to address this issue. This is an emergency, and I will look at that way, but it doesn't really feel like he thinks it is. As president, I will use my executive powers to combat the climate crisis in the absence of executive action. I think he means in the absence of legislative action. The initiatives include providing $2.3 billion in funding for a program that helps communities prepare for disasters by expanding flood control and retrofitting buildings. That could have been just part of the infrastructure bill. I don't understand, like, what this is supposed to be. As well as leveraging funding to help low-income families cover heating and cooling costs. Okay, great. But this all sounds like stuff that could be handled by the infrastructure, or that should have been handled by the infrastructure funding. In which case, what the F have you guys been doing? That's what I don't get. The president is also directing the Department of Interior to propose new offshore wind areas in the Gulf of Mexico, a plan that could power more than 3 million homes and help the administration reach its goal to deploy 30 gigawatts of offshore wind by 2030. I mean, that's a small W. I'll take that one. Biden is ordering the Interior Secretary to advance wind energy development in the waters of the mid and southern Atlantic coast and off Florida's Gulf Coast. Okay. More of that. Needed. The president announced an initiative during a speech at a former coal-fired plant in Somerset, Massachusetts. The plant will host a cable manufacturing facility to support the offshore wind industry. Right, so like, again, it's not as if the proof of concept isn't there where we can repurpose and reorganize our priorities to move in a more sustainable direction. I mean, the proof of concept is there. Get these people to work. Get these people federal jobs that are good paying jobs, building the future. The orders come as the White House struggles to salvage Biden's aggressive climate agenda. Jesus Christ. Makes it sound like Joe Biden's out here trying to like do something about it. Joe lives in air conditioning luxury. What does he know? Well, nothing, but I guarantee it has nothing to do with the air conditioning. The orders come as the White House struggles to salvage Biden's aggressive climate agenda after talks with West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin stalled last week. Manchin, a conservative, not a centrist, who holds a swing vote in the 50-50 Senate, for some reason, told Democratic officials that he won't support major climate provisions in the reconciliation bill, diminishing hopes of Congress passing any major climate legislation in this summer. Nice. Cool. Thanks, Manchin. I mean, like, at least, like, even if President Joe Biden has absolutely no, like, executive power, I mean, like, he should be 24/7 trying to strong arm this asshole into playing ball. Did you see my video on marine gravity energy storage? No, I did see the message, though.
Back in January.
Ah. Yeah, I do. I didn't. I am looking at the message here. The administration also faced an additional setback for its climate agenda after a major Supreme Court ruling last month limited the federal government's authority to impose regulations to cut carbon emissions for power plants. This is a famous EPA case, disastrous. But yes, there's two. But one thing that the president does have access to is declaring a national emergency, which will then release funds, federal funds, to address whatever national emergency there is. Federal resources, so to speak. Without Manchin's support on the bill, the president must rely primarily on executive order to address climate change, which can be overturned by future administrations, or declare a national emergency. Some executive actions could limit emissions from fossil fuel production on federal lands and waters and bolster electric vehicle usage. That's right, and he should be doing that if he has the ability to. Democrats and environmental groups have been calling on the president to issue an emergency declaration that would unlock federal resources to address climate change. Such a declaration could provide administration with legal authority to stop some oil and gas drilling or other fossil fuel plans and shift funds to clean energy projects. Yep. Senator Jeff Merkley and Bernie Sanders were joined by 7 Democratic legislators in an effort to urge Biden on Wednesday to immediately declare a climate emergency to unlock the powers of the National Emergency Act and pursue regulatory and administrative action to curb emissions. Declaring the climate crisis a national emergency under the NEA would unlock powers to rebuild a better economy with significant concrete actions. Under the NEA, you could redirect spending to build out renewable energy systems on military bases, implement large-scale clean transportation solutions, and finance distributed projects to boost climate resilience. Biden has vowed to slash U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by 50% to 52% by the end of the decade and reach net zero by 2050. That's 30 years too late. Too late. But without major climate legislation, the country's on track to miss the president's target, according to an analysis by an independent research firm, Rhodium Group. James from the internet, rating with a party of 114 folks. Boom! Howdy, everybody. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I hope y'all had fun at James's channel with the with all the goats and whatnot. Folks, if you do not know who James from the internet is, you all need to go ahead and follow James from the internet. He is James, and he is indeed from the internet. I guarantee it. Does phenomenal content, folks. Absolutely phenomenal content. Every time I go there, I always enjoy myself. So make sure that you take 5 seconds, folks, and just go show some love, go show some support. Also, I believe I saw carpet packs in there. Make sure you also, while you're at it, make sure you go follow twitch.tv/carpetpacks. Ross Publica, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. More Broth, thank you for the follow. If you guys have not seen, good to see you in the PM. Thank you so much. So James, just so you know that this is a new schedule, 5 Eastern. Because of my job, I've been forced into the PM side of things. Usually I do my things in the AM, but it is what it is. Folks, if you've never seen me before, prime time, that's right, I'm on prime time now. If you've never seen me before, never seen this channel before, I am a difficult truth, hence my name. We do the news, we do the politics, Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern time. We also do Saturday Catterdays around noon Eastern time. If you want to join us on that, it's a pretty chill version of the stream with the co-host. For those phenomenal folks who are hitting the follow button, I see a couple of you. Danzig, I've seen you in several chats too. You get 5 free emotes, including Bakita the cat, alright? That's right, Echo Resto Dragon. Howdy, how's it going? Welcome, everybody. We do the news, we do the politics, alright? Kensai, howdy. Gooby Rels, howdy. Careful, Pac-Man and Cedar are going to come after you for that background. Listen, the running gag of this channel is that they got that idea from me, okay? This is my set, okay? This is my set. Ard Ryan, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. This is my set, and I will fight to the death to defend that claim, because it is totally 1000% true. How could I be so mistaken? Of course they got it from you. Of course, naturally. Radical Maniac. Hiya. Howdy, 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 howdy. Ooh, I believe, you all need to go check out twitch.tv/Radical Maniac too. I'm so glad there's a running gag. Yeah, that's how I that's how I sold it. The funny thing about this set, and I guess I'll just give you some lore for the folks who don't know or who haven't seen this channel before. The funny thing is that I originally started this set. It was intended for me to keep the black and white. So actually, if you look behind the panel, it's actually painted black. The whole goal is to leave it black and white to kind of match with the little kind of grunge looking logo. So I was like, I'll just paint the panels black and white. But when I did so, I looked on the other side, and I realized that when I look at it from the other side, it actually looks kind of light blue. It's got like a gray blue tint to it, and I ended up liking that more. And that's how that happened. I found out which of the panels the majority report was using. Found out that they were just simply IKEA panels, IKEA like room division panels or whatever. And so I stole it. Yeah, sue me. Anyways, so that's how that happened. So we've been going over two things. Just to catch everybody up. Let me put this over here. So the first kind of setup to the story that we were just going over is the fact that we have massive, unprecedented, record-breaking heat waves that has just kind of been back-to-back. Numerous records have already been broken, and that just kind of sets the stage for, well, President Biden doing, well, nothing, effectively. Not enough, not nearly enough. Not nearly enough. And we have people like Joe Manchin torpedoing any glimpse of attempting to solve this problem. So what's going on here is a two-part thing. We have people like Joe Manchin refusing to play ball, refusing to do anything about anything because he's, well, captured by the coal industry. And we have President Biden, who is showing little to no urgency of the situation. Grim Odor, thank you for the follow. Alia with another 10 biddies. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Yeah. So that's where we're at. A historic climate emergency declaration is exactly what we need from Biden to match the scale and urgency of the crisis. I agree, said Jean Su, Energy Justice Program Director at the Center for Biological Diversity. By unlocking crucial climate powers, emergency governmental powers, Biden can put Manchin's gaslighting behind us and get busy getting us off fossil fuels and building renewable energy powerhouses that we desperately need. I just couldn't say it better myself. The reality is, like, I understand that President Biden can't just snap his fingers and fix everything, but there are certain things that he can do, and he's doing just about nothing. Next to nothing. Like, the executive orders that he has or his plan, at least, are to bolster programs to prepare for natural disasters. I mean, retrofitting buildings. This should have been part of the infrastructure bill. I mean, the most I can say about this plan, and we'll see how much of it even materializes. The most I can say about this plan is that there are plans to deploy a bunch of offshore wind power, which is fine. But I mean, save that. Not nearly enough. I do send articles on Twitter complaining that Biden's not aggressive enough. Let the U.S. House of Reps and the U.S. Senate know. Yeah, but that's the problem, though. Like, we can't. They're not doing anything about it. And if Biden can't get Senator Manchin or Sinema to play ball, then he should start using the powers that are available to him. Are casting the deciding votes? Right, yes. But right now, they're not. They're useless right now. However, Biden himself is not entirely out of his purview to do something, and he's just not. That's the problem. Like, at this point in time, like, Congress is busy gridlocked. Republicans are actively obstructive. Republicans are cannot be relied on for any help whatsoever, and the Dems are just lost in the sauce, lost in space completely. They're nowhere to be found. But it is civics, yeah. But the issue is that, like, also the president has, like, emergency powers that he could use. If Trump enacted the emergency powers to build the stupid wall, like, I mean, if Trump could easily flaunt the power of the executive to build and to reroute funds for the stupid wall project, I mean, this is embarrassing, is what I'm saying. This is embarrassing, and honestly, we don't have time. We don't have time. If Biden wants to do something, he should probably just do it. Whatever's within his purview. And something that is within his purview is declaring a national emergency. That's it. Wait, he did what? No, I'm not talking about executive orders. I'm talking about declaring a national emergency, which allows the president to reroute federal funds to address whatever the national emergency is, in this case, climate change. Oh, you're talking about Trump. Yeah, he did. He absolutely declared, he absolutely declared a national emergency at the border and rerouted, like, government resources to do that. So, I mean, like, you know, at what point? I mean, this is just frustrating at this point. What a joke. Yep. And, like, what's wild to me is that you can watch and see headlines like this and yet no action. No action whatsoever. No action. My memory is bad. I wonder why. I have no clue. You tell me. All right. Documents detail the secret strategy behind Trump's census citizenship question push. Yeah, so I remember this being a big deal. And now we know why. Former President Trump's administration spent years trying to add a census citizenship question as part of the secret strategy for altering population numbers used up to divide seats in Congress and the Electoral College. Internal documents released on Wednesday by the House Oversight and Reform Committee confirm. So, yeah. It's to mess with the maps. It's to mess with maps and the makeup of Congress. Long kept from the public, the Trump administration memos and emails were disclosed by lawmakers following more than a 2-year legal fight that began after Trump officials refused to turn them over for a congressional investigation. Rip Spong, no idea. Citing the exceptional circumstances of the case, the Biden administration, which inherited the lawsuit last year, agreed to allow the House Oversight Committee members and their staff to review the documents. The hotly contested question, is this person a citizen of the U.S., ultimately did not end up in the 2020 census forms. In 2019, the Supreme Court blocked the Trump administration's unprecedented efforts after finding its use of the Voting Rights Act as the stated reasoning for the question seems to have been contrived, said Chief Justice Roberts. Before Trump eventually released a presidential memo in 2020 calling for the unprecedented exclusion of unauthorized immigrants from a key set of census numbers, early release of internal documents and public statements by Trump officials signaled their interest in using the citizenship data to try to break with more than 2 centuries of precedent in how Congress seats and Electoral College votes are redistributed among the states. Still, the newly disclosed documents provide a detailed look into some early behind-the-scenes discussions at a time when Trump officials were focused on keeping their plans under wraps. Yikes. The documents released, along with new reports by the House Oversight Committee, comes as Congress considers a House bill that could help shield upcoming national headcount from a kind of interference that settled the 2020 census during the Trump administration. Today's committee memo pulls back the curtain on the shameful conduct and shows clearly how the Trump administration tried to manipulate the census for political gain while lying to the public and Congress about their goals, said Representative Carolyn Maloney of New York, who chairs the House Oversight Committee and introduced the bill. It is clear that the legislative reforms are needed to prevent any further illegal or unconstitutional efforts to interfere with the census and chip away at our democracy. Well, that's already been happening, folks. This is the incompetent administration. Wait for a capable one to start doing sneaky shit. I guess they already do. Oh, yeah. 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 Just because they had a dubious understanding of how the process works, doesn't mean they're not going to continue to try. They're not going to continue to try, because they will. They will. Multiple drafts of a newly released memo from 2017 shows that in the months before the March 2018 announcement of then-Secretary Wilbur Ross' decision to add the citizenship question, Trump officials were particularly focused on who specifically should be included in the census numbers used to reapportion congressional seats and electoral votes among the states once a decade. Both the U.S. citizens and non-citizens, regardless of their immigration status, have been part of those official numbers since the country's first national headcount in 1790. Despite the 14th Amendment required to include the whole number of persons in each state, however, Trump officials were searching a way to exclude unauthorized immigrants. In the versions of the memo presented in August 2017, to Ross, who oversaw the Census Bureau, a key section referring to the constitutional instruction for divvying up congressional seats is titled, "The Apportionment Clause does not address the exclusion of non-citizens or illegal aliens from the population when apportioning U.S. representatives." Then Commerce Department Attorney James Uthmeyer wrote the memo at the request of Earl Comstock, another Trump appointee who was under pressure from Ross to figure out how to get a citizenship question on the 2020 census forms. an early draft by Utheimer, appeared to be skeptical of the administration's ambitions. Over 200 years of precedent, along with substantially convincing historical and textual arguments, suggest that citizenship data likely cannot be used for the purpose of apportioning representatives, wrote Uthmeier, who is now chief of staff to Florida Republican Ron DeSantis. He held the rose. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. In an email sharing the revised memo with another Trump appointee in the Commerce Department, Uthmeier noted, "Feel free to let me know if this is sugarcoating the analysis too much." Uthmeier was not available for comment. Christina Pushaw, press secretary for DeSantis' office, said in an email on Wednesday. Ross and Comstock did not immediately respond for comment. In fall of 2017, Utheimer hand-delivered a memo and a handwritten cover note to John Gore, a Trump appointee at the Justice Department, who ghostwrote a letter that Ross used to publicly justify his decision to add a citizenship question. Ross repeatedly testified in Congress that his decision to add a question was in response solely to that Justice Department letter, which requested more detailed U.S. citizenship data that could be used to enforce Voting Rights Act protections for racial and language minorities. But the handwritten note obtained by the House Oversight Committee showed that Ross helped to orchestrate that DOJ request. Secretary Ross has reviewed concerns and thinks the DOJ would have a legitimate use of data for VRA purposes, Uthmeier wrote to Gore by hand. Months before the DOJ submitted its request in 2017, Uthmeier also followed up on a request from Ross by researching which states have used citizenship data in redistricting for Voter Rights Act enforcement. Oof. One of those emails emphasizes that work should be kept quiet. Ultimately, everyone is in agreement with our approach to move slowly, carefully, and deliberately so as not to expose us to litigation risk. Jesus Christ. Imagine. Uthmeier wrote to Comstock and other Trump appointees in the Commerce Department, adding that they were not yet discussing our analysis with outside parties that may take our discussions public. An earlier investigation by the Commerce Department Office of Inspector General into Ross's congressional testimony and internal documents about the reasoning for his decision to add a citizenship question concluded that the former Commerce Secretary misrepresented the full rationale for adding the question. According to the probe's final report, the department internal watchdog said that during the Trump administration, it presented those findings to the Public Integrity Section of the Justice Department Criminal Division, which declined to prosecute. Humanity, thank you for the follow. Muhammad Zubair, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. Some Republican lawmakers still want a census citizenship question. During a House Oversight Committee held hours after Wednesday's release of the Trump administration documents, Republican lawmakers attempted to dismiss Maloney's argument that revelations underscored the need to pass the committee chair's proposal to better protect future headcount from any political interference, as it should. We need to know exactly, the count so that we can divvy up resources properly. And also, the fact that the Republican Party wanted to finagle the numbers to mess with the congressional makeup is deeply disturbing. Instead, Republican Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona, that's rich, introduced an amendment to Maloney's bill that would require adding a citizenship question to the census and excluding unauthorized immigrants from the census numbers used to reapportion Congress. Research by the Census Bureau found that including a citizenship question on the 2020 census would have likely deterred many Latinx and Asian American residents from taking part in the national tally, which is also used to redraw maps of voting districts and guide the distribution of an estimated $1.5 trillion a year in federal money to local communities. To produce citizenship data that would be more detailed than estimates already produced through the Bureau's American Community Survey, the Bureau's researchers have also recommended using existing government records that would be likely less costly and more accurate than people's responses to the citizenship question. Yeah, and there's the receipts. Incredible. All right, we've got a couple of videos. So sit tight. Sit tight and let's get educated.
Back in January last year, I made a video looking at the concept of gravity energy storage. You may remember me showing you a group of design students who set up a nice little demo on a very high building that generated enough electrical energy to run a record turntable. Clever stuff. Back then, I focused on two companies who were developing their own different interpretations of gravity energy storage at utility grid scale. One of them was the Swiss-based company Energy Vault, whose massive open-air tower and multiple crane design got quite badly panned at the time by some well-known YouTube debunking channels. The other company was an Edinburgh-based outfit called Gravitricity. They were pursuing a very different road to achieving a gravity energy storage system, opting for a much safer, more stable and predictable system that involves lowering massive weights into decommissioned mine shafts. Now, one of the requests I get quite often from you good folks out there is for me to occasionally revisit technologies that I've featured in past videos to check out what progress they've been making. So 1 year down the line from that original video, I thought now was as good a time as any to take another look. Hello and welcome to Just Have a Think. This whole using gravity to store energy thing is a pretty good idea in principle. In fact, we've effectively already been doing it for more than 100 years with pumped hydro facilities.
That's right.
That make use of reservoirs of water at different heights, pumping water uphill when power is available and letting it flow back downhill through a turbine when power is required. The trouble is those facilities are quite expensive to build, and of course you need the right geographical conditions to make them work. So they're not something you can simply replicate all over the world.
Right, and not only that, like you could also have potential damage to ecological, systems there.
Energy Vault's original concept was this massive freestanding tower on top of which they planned to bolt about 5 cranes that could winch great 30-ton weights up and down, depending on whether there was a surplus or deficit of energy on the electricity grid. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds of why some commentators were so critical of this system. I'll let you go and find those debunkers yourself on YouTube and other social media platforms. Suffice to say, there were some very significant questions of physics that appeared not to have been addressed, like the fact that all the blocks at the bottom of the pile possessed precisely 0 potential energy because they were already sitting on the floor. Plus the perfectly reasonable observation that it'd be quite tricky to stop a 30-ton weight wandering off the vertical on a windy day, which would not only mess up the synchronization of the system, but would also put untold stresses and strains on the tower structure itself. Energy Vault now appears to have moved away from that original design concept and pivoted towards this new idea, which they tell us is the Energy Vault Resiliency Centre, or EVRC. It's a warehouse-style building about the size of a very large football stadium, housing hundreds of multi-storey racking systems carrying 30-ton blocks in each location, all of which will apparently get lifted, dropped and shunted from side to side by a complex network of computer-controlled pulleys and casters. Now that is a heck of a construction project. But Energy Vault aren't stopping there. They reckon this facility is a modular design that can be built out into even larger configurations, presumably eventually reaching the size of a small town. Now, of course, this video was not filmed at a real-world construction site. It is in fact a computer-generated rendering of what such a football stadium-sized facility would look like. You can tell by the little white blobby trees in the background. Hey, no flies on me. So as far as I know, such a building has not yet been created anywhere in the world, and Energy Vault are still at concept stage. I must admit, it does look like an awful lot of expensive infrastructure to support the loads involved, all of which would most likely require some serious regular maintenance over the long haul. So I think I'll let you make your own mind up about this one, and maybe I'll have another little rummage around at some point in 2023 to see if the company has actually broken ground anywhere in the world. In the meantime, a very different company with a very different approach to harnessing the advantages of a gravity energy storage system is Gravitricity in Edinburgh, who I mentioned at the start of the video. I caught up with their MD, Charlie Blair, via Zoom recently to help with my understanding of how Gravitricity differs from Energy Vault and to get the latest news on how their concept is progressing. Arguably, the most fundamental difference between the two concepts is that Gravitricity believe that outside of pumped hydro, the only serious way to achieve safe, reliable, dispatchable grid-scale gravity energy storage is to use the geology of the Earth. One of the most compelling arguments for this approach is that instead of building a massive warehouse with miles and miles of steel support structures inside, you can simply use the planet to hold up your weight. After all, that's precisely what a pumped hydro system does, isn't it? Now, just to really confuse the issue, the first demo structure that Gravitricity built back in 2021 was a steel framed tower above ground. So what was all that about then? Well, Charlie explained that it was a simple matter of making things as easy as possible for the test rig so that all the mechanical elements could be simply monitored and viewed by the engineers. The tower only needed to be quite small compared to a full-size configuration too. The rig was essentially built to assess the dynamic behaviour of the weight during these stop-start phases of the system. and specifically the speed of response that the system could achieve as gravity competed with inertia to get that weight moving. That sort of test data is absolutely crucial for any device providing grid frequency regulation. Engineering simulations showed that the system would operate within acceptable parameters, so the test rig was there to validate those results, and happily for Gravitricity, validate them it did. The concept demo used a naturally high-density iron ore aggregate derived from magnetite. At full scale, each weight will be around 500 tons, so having it in lots of small pieces rather than one big solid lump obviously makes it infinitely more manageable for transport, as well as on-site handling and maintenance, and even for decommissioning at the end of the facility's operational lifetime. The winches and motor generator system that allow the weights to be gently lowered and raised work on very similar principles to the regen braking system in an electric vehicle, which harnesses the energy that would otherwise be wasted as the vehicle slows down or goes down a hill. Except, of course, in this case, the energy is going directly into the grid rather than into a battery. The core elements of the system, like the shafts and the weights and the structural elements holding the winches and motor generators, all have projected operational lifetimes of more than 50 years. The cables are good for 75,000 cycles, which is about 10 times the number of cycles that a typical battery can manage.
Wow.
At full scale.
Well, I mean, like, the question is, I guess, how expensive is this, and how quick can something like this be built? And why would we... What would be the argument for this when we have things like solar and wind, right? I mean, I guess in areas that can't, I guess.
So the shaft depth will be between 300 and 500 meters, and the containers of iron ore will be between 3 and 5 meters in diameter and perhaps 4 or 5 meters deep. The system's designed to be extremely versatile in terms of duration of discharge. It can be used for anything from instant response frequency regulation with a single weight system in an existing mine shaft, which is extremely useful in conjunction with intermittent sources like wind power, right up to long duration discharge times of between 2 and 8 hours in purpose-built multiple weight configurations to complement solar power and to provide extra electricity for peak hours of the day. Now, the question many of you quite rightly ask me about any of the energy storage systems I look at on the channel is, what's the levelized cost of storage, or LCOS? And the answer to that question is it depends on which variables and parameters you put into the calculation. Gravitricity commissioned Imperial College London to assess their system, and the parameters they input look like this for a storage system with a discharge time of 2 to 6 hours. For a 24.4 megawatt hour system cycling 730 times a year for 25 years, the Gravitricity system stacks up very favourably indeed, not just against lithium-ion batteries, but also against a range of other energy storage options currently available.
Nice.
The next step for Gravitricity will be to assess different locations all over the world to establish which ones are suitable for this kind of system. And there'll be no shortage of options. The European Union is keen to accelerate coal mine closures as part of its Repower EU initiative, and it obviously makes sense to look for ways to do something useful with those decommissioned facilities.
Okay.
In fact, Gravitricity is already in contact with mine owners in countries like the Czech Republic and Poland, and similar opportunities exist in North and South America and in Africa. Having derived very positive data from their proof of concept tower up in Scotland, Gravitricity are now in the early stages of an 18-month engineering design phase for their first full-size, fully operational facility. Once that work has been done and the location has been finalised, then there'll be a further 18 months of build time, which takes us up to somewhere like 2025 or 26. After that, the turnaround time for subsequent projects is likely to be relatively quick. So there you have it, folks, a progress report as promised. I guess what it shows is it's bloody hard work to get from design concept to a real-world commercial operation. Gravitricity are a pretty pragmatic and realistic team of predominantly engineering types who understand that there are no shortcuts and no amount of slick marketing will make the process move any faster. But their system does look like it could serve a very useful purpose in a very large number of otherwise useless and redundant locations all over the world.
Yeah, like, I mean, that's an interesting concept. So instead of, I mean, you know, just having all these abandoned mines, might as well repurpose them, if possible.
And if it can achieve that, then it really will be offering a meaningful contribution to the sustainable energy transition. Now, you're probably chomping at the bit to voice your opinion on this one, so by all means jump down to the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. Keep it civil though, eh? That's it for this week. A massive thank you, as always, to our fantastic Patreon.
Nice. If you want to check out what this channel's all about, feel free to check out the YouTube video. Pretty decent stuff. What is up with this video? Oh, this isn't 2000. Oh, yeah. I've seen this one before. I've seen this one before, Astro. This is from quite a while ago. Yeah. I think I remember seeing this.
The invention that I will present here works in a reverse way. Instead of concrete dams retaining water, the system uses the water in the ocean to retain concrete weights with floats. The main breakthrough results from taking advantage of much higher elevation differences. In the ocean, with an average depth of 13 feet, it is possible to store the same quantity of electricity in 1 kilo of concrete as in 1 kilo of battery. The invention uses this principle in a simple way by using standard components like a barge, steel cables, pulleys, electric motors and generators, and concrete weights with floats. When there is an excess of electricity on the grid, the energy can be absorbed by the system by raising the weights one by one, with the electric motor on the barge connected to the grid through the submarine
this is a similar
electric cable.
concept.
And when there is no wind, this potential energy can be transformed back to electricity.
Yeah, this is a
by
similar
descending the
concept.
weights one by one and running on electric generator. With 13 feet depth, each weight will absorb or produce electricity during 30 minutes. Lanyard's manipulation can be done with conventional rod-type submarine robots. The system offers total flexibility, since it's possible to adapt the number of weight for one barge to the necessary storage time. For example, 10 hours for solar panels or more than 2 days for wind power. The invention solves several problems. It reduces the cost of anchoring cables. The system can be operated even in stormy weather conditions, and it ensures a constant or variable power, depending on the needs in real time. The energy efficiency is higher than 80% on a total round trip.
I think that the concept is interesting, but I think I like the other one better. I think I like the other one better. Interesting stuff. Proof that we have the capability of removing ourselves from fossil fuels in several different ways should we choose. I mean, we don't necessarily have to rely on fossil fuels for energy. President Manchin. All right, folks. We've got breaking news? Okay. This seems to be breaking news from a couple of hours ago. Bipartisan Senate group reaches deal to reform Electoral Count Act. Okay, let's see. A bipartisan group of senators reached a deal on Wednesday to reform a federal law and prevent a future presidential candidate from overturning the will of the people and the result of a valid presidential election. The lawmakers have agreed on two bills that would reform the Electoral Count Act of 1887, which governs how electoral votes are counted following a presidential election. Citing ambiguities in the law, Donald Trump and his attorneys pushed his Vice President Mike Pence to disrupt the counting of electoral votes that showed that he lost the 2020 election, escalating calls for the 135-year-old law to be reformed. Even before the election, experts warned that the law was ambiguous and could be exploited. Though through numerous meetings and debates among our colleagues, as well as conversations with a wide variety of election experts and legal scholars, we have developed a legislation that establishes a clear guideline for our system of certifying and counting electoral votes for president and vice president. We urge our colleagues in both parties to support these simple common sense reforms, a group of 16 senators said in a joint statement. Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, the two Democrats who stymied more sweeping voting rights reform this year, are among the group that developed the proposal. Republicans in the group, including Maine Senator Susan Collins, South Carolina, Senator Lindsey Graham in North Carolina, Senator Tom Tillis. The first bill is called the Electoral Count Reform and Presidential Transition Improvement Act, would fix ambiguities in the existing law while clarifying when an incoming administration can access federal resources. Under current law, Congress has to consider an objection to the counting of electoral votes if just one member of each house objects. One of the proposed bills would raise that threshold, requiring at least 20% support. Requiring the support at least 20% of the members in each house to consider an objection. The bill also creates a judicial process with expedited review, first by a 3-judge panel and then by the Supreme Court over certain matters related to disputed electors. In 2020, Trump allies encouraged submitting alternative slate of electors in key swing states that Trump lost. The new law clarifies that only the slate of electors officially approved by the state's governor can be submitted to Congress. It also clarifies the term failed election used in the Freudian slip there. It also clarifies the term failed election used in another 19th century law, saying that a state can move its presidential election only if there is extraordinary and catastrophic events. Those were concerns in 2020 that ambiguities in that language could be used by state legislators to throw out the popular vote. Yeah, I mean, the fact that all of this is being all of this electoral college system and elector selection system is based on complete nothing until, well, maybe until now. It's all based on norms, which is wild to me. A future presidential candidate, I wonder who could that possibly be? Possibly. I know at this point in time, it's kind of expected that Donald Trump announce his candidacy at some point soon. But yeah, the point is that the fact that this electoral system, the way we're doing things right now, the electoral college, is all based on norms and can be so easily exploited, tells me that this is a bad system. After Trump insisted that Pence had the authority to unilaterally throw out the electoral votes, the bill makes certain that the vice president has no such authority. It makes clear that the vice president's presence at the counting of electoral votes is solely in a ministerial role. The bill also clarifies that both presidential candidates should get access to presidential transition funds while an election result is disputed. Trump delayed giving Joe Biden access to resources to transition in the White House after the 2020 election. Yeah, he was too busy throwing a hissy fit. The Enhanced Election Security and Protection Act is the second proposal and would up criminal penalties against people convicted of intimidating or threatening candidates, voters, and poll workers amid a significant uptick in threats after 2020. It increases the maximum penalty of those who make those threats from 1 year to 2 years in prison. What? The bill would require election records to be preserved, help the USPS deal with mail-in ballots, and reauthorize for 5 years a commission that works with states to improve their voting practices. I mean, like, all of this can just kind of be, fixed by just using popular vote. There's no need to go through all this effort. There's no need to go through all this effort when you can just make the election done and ran by popular vote. I mean, we do it for every other election. Literally, every other election is just simply whoever gets the most votes wins. I mean, period. That's just how it should be. We could avoid all of these problems. And we could circumvent the necessity to make all these band-aids that ultimately don't that ultimately create more unnecessary nonsense when you can just run your elections by popular vote. I know that's it. Whoever has the most votes wins. That's it. I don't think that that's a controversial or worse system. I mean, when we do it for federal elections and governors who are arguably incredibly powerful, state governors, we do it by popular vote. If we had that, we would only have like 2 Republican presidents. Yeah. Yep. What's the saying? The Electoral College is affirmative action for Republicans? Because they seem to have a hard time winning the popular vote. I wonder why. They seem to need to rely on a dubious, undemocratic systems to win power. I just found this in an article. The last 2 Republicans to win a majority of the popular vote in a presidential contest were father and son, George W. And yeah, well, 2004, that's after he managed to finagle himself in 2001. So he managed to finagle himself in 2001, and of course, because we were in a war, we were in wartime. Generally speaking, it gives a kind of rally, and people will vote for that president, whether or not he's doing good or not. Generally speaking, people vote that way for some weird reason. Yeah, and John Kerry was a really uninspiring candidate, much like Hillary Clinton, right? I mean, so he's so inspiring that I kind of forgot that he was the candidate for the Democratic Party. Jesus. Hillary was more polarizing. Kerry was just mad to almost everyone. Yeah, I guess. Well, I mean, like, I think that Hillary was more polarizing just because, like, well, it was a combination of, like, multiple things. But I think that the Trump campaign definitely made it so.
Hello, I'm Congressman Adam Schiff. Donald Trump has said he may run again for president. If Republicans take over the House majority, it will be that much easier for him.
What?
After everything we have witnessed, I don't need to tell you what a disaster that would be. He was the most dangerous president in modern history.
That's Bernie's
if
line.
If Trump ever gets the chance to return to power, I know one thing is certain. A Republican Congress will do nothing to restrain him.
This episode is brought to you by Storyblocks. The minimum salary for a member of Congress is $174,000 a year. Now, that might seem like a lot of money, maybe even a life-changing amount.
I'll be the first to say Bill Clinton's presidency didn't do Hillary any favors. That's true. That's a good point. Salutations. Howdy.
After all, the average American makes about 3 times less. But in reality, that number means very little to many of our politicians. That 6-figure check is pretty insignificant when you compare it to the wealth of someone like Nancy Pelosi, whose net worth is somewhere upward of $115 million. For reference, that ridiculous amount of money puts her in the top 0.1% of Americans, and makes her one of the wealthiest politicians in this country. If she had made all that through her salary alone, never spending a penny and only ever cashing in her current all-time high House Speaker salary of $239,000, she would have had to work for over 500 years. Now, Pelosi's not a vampire.
Yeah. 115 million. Pelosi alone. Hey, ADT, good to see you, and happy hump day. Howdy.
Despite what some very convincing Facebook posts say. So, where did all this money come from? Where do any of our politicians make their money? As it turns out, Nancy's situation isn't all that unique.
Citation needed.
Many congresspeople see their wealth grow by thousands of percentage points after they're elected, and the majority of our federal lawmakers are full-on millionaires. For reference, and I can't believe I feel the need to say this, most Americans, not millionaires. So where does all this money come from? Let's stick with Pelosi for a bit.
Well, speaking gigs, business deals, money in the stock market. Let's see.
There are a few ways she and other politicians make their money, but the first one we obviously have to talk about is investment.
Yep.
Using
Stock
Nancy's
market.
public records, researchers at Open Secrets found that in 2018, she invested $46.5 million in real estate.
Yeah, she's a landlord. Holy yikes. Boom, right as you said it too. Carpe. Oh boy. Oh, can't really do speaking gigs while in office. Gotcha. She's more heavily invested in real estate than anything. Yeah. Just as you said it. There's the graph right there. Jesus. By the way, what are your thoughts on Cali governor? Is he what we only have if it came down to him and DeSantis? I mean, like, what are you talking about? Like the presidential race? If there's a scenario where it's the California governor, the Cali governor versus Ron DeSantis, 100%. Newsom. That's right. Over DeSantis. Like, I think I would pick like a rock. DeSantis is arguably incredibly more dangerous than Donald Trump even. DeSantis, yes, exactly. I think I'd rather pick him a shitlib than a fascist. That's really the goal. Is to utilize whatever tools are available to put a stop to that. And any Republican, anything with an R next to it, just say no to that. Easy peasy. Blue-haired tolerant liberal. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Yeah, so anything that has an R next to it is a no-no. Is a no-go. If a person decides for Congress, no investment. Yeah, that would be nice.
In electronics manufacturing, and a cool $15 million into just Apple. Admittedly, this doesn't tell us where this spending money first comes from. We'll get to that later. But this information still matters a lot. That's because, as it turns out, Nancy Pelosi is an investment genius. Investing, and doing a bang-up job at it, has been one of the big ways she and her husband Paul have been able to multiply their fortunes during her tenure as a politician. Between 2020 and 2021, the Pelosi's traded over $50 million in assets for an annualized return of 69%.
Nice. Nice. That's unusually high. It's almost like they have maybe information. Nah, that couldn't be it.
Now, that number doesn't mean anything to me, except the obvious thing. So I googled it, and this is about 6 to 7 times higher than the average stock market return.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I was like, that's unusually high. That's very strange. Huh. It's almost like it's almost like one could say that there's some type of, how do I say, insider knowledge for being a congressperson. Insider, the word, it slips my mind.
Making her a better investor than Warren Buffett, George Soros, and Cathie Wood, whose whole deal is investing. They don't spend any time holding elected office or anything. The point is that these returns are incredibly lucrative. While millions of Americans fell into poverty because of the COVID pandemic, Pelosi's wealth grew by an eye-watering $16.7 million.
Woo!
So, of course, when a reporter asks her the question, should members of Congress and their spouses...
Woohoo! Yeah, insider what? Whatting? What? What now? Didn't Martha Stewart go to jail for that? Yeah. Paul and Nancy Pelosi Charitable Foundation, with an Irish ruling year of 1992. And donations are tax deductible. Yeah. But no, this is separate. This is her just blatantly operating in what can only be described as insider trading, but
spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress. She said no. She said no.
No.
Okay, Pelosi is an incredibly quote-unquote talented investor, and it might be tempting to single her out, but none of this is all that unusual. It turns out congresspeople have always been surprisingly good at investing.
Surprisingly.
Every 15 minutes, someone buys a home.
Whoa. Every 15 minutes, a large investment corporation buys up multiple properties at a time and squeezes people out of homes. Gotcha.
From the start of the pandemic. In February, this one wrote this article, where he says the US is better prepared than ever before to face emerging public health threats. But then a week later, he did this. Weird. Well, not really. Before the rest of us knew how bad COVID would get, but after internal briefings by the CDC and Fauci on the severity of the upcoming pandemic, these 4 senators dumped a whole bunch of money they held in the stock market right as it was about to crash.
Interesting. Damn, that's a weird coincidence. Wow. I mean, these guys must be omniscient. They must have not omniscient. Precog. They must have precog powers. Wow. Impressive. Yeah, it's a lot of ice cream.
They all made hundreds of thousands of dollars, presumably using information not disclosed to the public. But hey now, maybe they're just really good investors.
Yeah.
The DOJ certainly seems to think so, since all the investigations into what they did have since been closed.
Conveniently.
Seems reasonable. Here again, I want to be clear that what these senators did is not special. I led with the people with names and faces, but this trend is bigger than 4 senators and the Pelosi's. Congresspeople have always been surprisingly good at investing. A 5-month-long Business Insider investigation found that at least 49 members of Congress and 182 high-ranking congressional staffers engage in insider trading.
Holy yikes. That is wild. And nothing. And nothing. It's just like, oh yeah, this is just kind of what happens. I mean, kind of.
Multiple successive academic reports that looked into senatorial stock returns have consistently found that, overall, senators are just really good at beating the market.
Right,
oftentimes by several percent.
Yeah.
Why? Well, if you look at a 2017 report by Public Citizen about senators and stock trading, you'll find that many individual senators often trade stocks in businesses that they oversee in their official capacity. I'm no expert, but this might be a problem, no? What do I know? I should just listen to people like Pelosi, who always know what to say and have the best explanations for why this isn't a problem. Truly airtight arguments.
Because this is a free market.
Makes sense to me. Everybody's...
That's actually definitionally not a free market. If you're the one that are pulling the levers and have insider information, then it's not operating. The full idea, the concept is a meme. It's a meme. Who's overseeing the overseers? What laws are enforced? Not those. Not insider trading laws. That's for sure.
I say thank you to Mrs. Pelosi for that valuable lesson in economics. But fine, what if investments and abuses of information couldn't explain any of the astonishing wealth of our politicians? Another good place to look is lobbying. Lobbying is a very,
I don't think that means
well-funded
what she thinks
industry.
it means.
In
Yeah.
2021, $3.7 billion were spent on federal lobbying alone. As you can see from this list, the top spenders are almost exclusively businesses, large industries, and the firms that represent them. You can put that info on a graph and it looks like this. Labor and citizen special interests represent almost nothing. If lobbying were a bag of Chex Mix, you'd be getting like 1 rye chip per 50 handfuls of pretzels. But the thing with lobbying is that it doesn't work like an outright bribe. There's a lot of money in lobbying, but in the grand scheme of things, the amounts that are actually spent mean very little to the politicians. While I can tell you that Nancy Pelosi got $180K from officially registered lobbyists, she's not really getting that money for herself. That money mainly goes into campaign financing. And then there's all sorts of amounts not on this list, that go into things like extravagant dinners. In any case, it's not where the millions of dollars in the Pelosi bank account are coming from. Lobbying gets money into political hands in a much more indirect way, that's sustained by a mutually beneficial relationship. To get the wheels turning on this relationship, lobbies will get close to politicians, using a business's wealth to build rapport that can be translated into favorable legislation or outright subsidies. Essentially, they'll pay for ways to sit at the same table at a nice restaurant or get an hour in the right office. Why? Well, one study estimates that every dollar spent on lobbying returns an average of $760.
Nice!
If that number seems a little high to you, and it might very well be, regardless of what the actual amount is, it will always be more than what's put in. Businesses wouldn't lobby if it didn't serve them. But that's just what businesses get from lobbying. What about politicians? Well, for politicians, the benefits of lobbying are split between long-term and short-term benefits. In the long term, politicians know that 2/3 of them will leave politics to enter the lobbying industry. Once there, their years in government will have made them very valuable assets to lobbyists, and therefore come with a nice big bag of money with a dollar sign on it.
Nice!
That means that politicians spend years in office greasing the revolving door that'll let them leave government with lucrative jobs in the industries they cozied up to during their tenure.
Base.
But that's for the long term. In the short term...
So I think this is a momentous opportunity for those folks that are here to hear my announcement. I will now be running for the... I will now be running for a congressional seat. Please vote for me. Free, yeah, free to do whatever they want, more like it. Yeah.
Cozying up to lobbyists can come with other, more immediate benefits. For example, in 2008, after Visa made a few small contributions to Pelosi's campaign, her husband Paul was granted privileged access to a Visa IPO, where he was able to invest a large sum of money before stock prices went up. And all Nancy had to do was stall the passage of a law that would cut into Visa's profits, which she did.
Nice.
But fine, let's keep going and assume investment and lobbying mean absolutely nothing to these people's wallets. The reality is, a lot of our politicians are just exceptionally wealthy right off the bat. While a lot of politicians use their office as an elevator into the upper strata, many others come in fully formed, using government only to exaggerate their already impressive wealth. That's the case for the Pelosis, whose shared finances are built on the venture capital firm that Paul founded. The company with probably the least Googleable name in the world, Financial Leasing Services. And I know I focused on the Pelosi's a lot this video, but this applies to like half our politicians. And there's a reason for that. Being wealthy opens up a corridor to political life that being an average American just doesn't. At the personal level, being wealthy means you don't have to worry about keeping a full-time job while you run, or making sure you have food on the table and a roof over your head. That's huge, but that's not where the biggest benefits come from. The main reason the wealthy have such an easy time taking over politics comes from the fact that their incentives align with those of established parties.
How do you focus on a future that won't stand still?
Parties have an incentive to promote wealthier candidates and support them more because wealth begets wealth. Wealthy candidates come with wealthy connections that can be used to fundraise and finance ever more expensive campaigns.
I mean,
wealthy
that's
candidates
true.
have a lot of friends who would all benefit from them winning, and who will therefore be willing to raise money that parties can use to beat their opponents. Wealthy candidates also do not pose a threat to this model, in a way that less wealthy, more normal representatives do. If the only way you can get people into office is with generous checks from the wealthy, and that truly is the only reliable way to do it, then a candidate who opposes wealth of this kind threatens your party's whole electoral strategy.
I mean, that's
The
not
wealthy do not
always
want to finance a
entirely
party-
true, but certainly it is a problem. Of the Twitch American Party, yeah, I'm filing to run for representative now.
That will take their dominant position in society away from them. People who do not look like you and me, who do not live the same lives, who do not face the same living conditions, make it into politics way more often just because it's easier for them than it is for a genuine representative of a country's citizens. Hence why most congresspeople are millionaires and most Americans aren't. And the thing is, there are real consequences. Our politics are dramatically influenced by all these different relationships to the capitalist class. Whether it's because of its disproportionate amount of seats at the table, its powerful use of lobbying, or the fact that it's in the best interest of politicians invested in the stock market to cater to capital. These people are not like you. They do not represent you, and they don't act in your interest. This doesn't mean that not a single law gets passed that protects those who work for a living. Those laws just aren't the priority. They get artificially delayed, pared down to the bare minimum, and written carefully to only sacrifice the short-term interest of capital for the long-term survival of the capitalist economy. What matters is not the individual battles, it's that the overall outcome doesn't threaten profitability. The balance of power is on their side. Wrestling it away and putting that power back in the hands of the people is the first priority. Over the years, I've had a lot of people ask me how I make my videos. Particularly, they want to know where I get all my footage. The answer is Storyblocks. Storyblocks is one of the most well-known platforms for sourcing royalty-free assets like stock footage, After Effects templates, music,
Alright.
constraints. If I'm being perfectly honest, there's no way I could make my videos without Storyblocks and the footage they provide. I use a ton of stock footage in my videos, so I'm constantly downloading shots from Storyblocks, and capturing and more. And if you do happen to want a meme shot, they have those too. If you're looking to get started making videos like mine, I highly recommend you give Storyblocks a try. They've got flexible subscription plans for every budget. And if you're like me and you need literally hours of stock footage, their unlimited all-access plan gives you the freedom to download and use as many assets as—
Nice. Anyways, great video. The concept is sound. The argument is sound. Oh man. The fact that this is even a thing is just wild to me. It's just wild. Means testing is the biggest FU to citizenry ever. Yeah. It is true. Maple Leaf Dragon, howdy. How's it going? But that is the system that we currently live in. We currently live in a system where politics is essentially, for lack of a better word, co-opted by money. Politics is one big slush fund of money going around. Folks, unfortunately, that is all the time I have today. If you guys enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the follow button. Join us Monday through Thursday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I promise you'll have fun here. And it's designed to be a chill place to be for the news and politics. Also, if you guys have a moment, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to keep up with the channel, join the Discord. Any updates will be posted there. I want to give a huge thank you to James from the internet. He is James and he is from the internet. I highly recommend you guys go check them out. Twitch.tv/James from the internet. I'll give him another shout out here. Thank you all for sticking by. Don't forget, there's plenty of other wonderful folks here in chat. Please go check out and please support twitch.tv/carpetpacks. Twitch.tv/AlioShare. Twitch.tv/RadicalManiac. Go show them some love, alright? These folks are fantastic content creators. Go show some support again. Huge shout out. And thank you to James from the internet. I appreciate bringing your wonderful folks in. You guys have been absolutely awesome. Okay? And I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for all the new follows. Thank you for the biddies. I appreciate that. Folks, as always, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. See ya. Thank you, Heat. I appreciate you hanging here. Thanks for the shout out. No problem. Hang tight, folks. Hang tight. Let's go show some love to left flank vets, alright? Hang tight, everybody. We are heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. See ya.